What's up everyone? So today I was going to talk about this diesel heater. If you're watching this video, it's very likely you've seen other videos on these same exact heaters. These are the popular Chinese diesel vehicle heater. These are primarily built to be used in a vehicle like a camper van or a bus conversion, something like that. But a lot of people have also been using them as a shop heater. So I decided to pick one of these up and give it a try and see if it actually could work well as a shop heater. And I just want to go over my experience with this. I've tried using a couple different fuels and fuel mixtures in here. So I just kind of want to go over my experience with it and let you all know what I think of this and if it really is a practical. So first off, these are quite cheap. I picked this one up for I think $107 on eBay. They may have gone up a little bit since then. I got it about a month ago during some sales that were going on. So from what I understand, these are basically a replica or a knockoff of a name brand. I think it's either German or some European made heater that works in the very similar principle to this. Those name brand ones cost around $1,200 or so, maybe more. But they started pumping out these Chinese, essentially knockoff ones, and you can get them very cheap. And I thought I'd give this a try as a kind of auxiliary heat source in my shop. Just to show you, I do currently have a wood stove in my shop here, and that does work quite well. But it requires, cutting and chopping firewood and making sure I have enough firewood, enough fuel to burn out here. So I picked this up mainly because I had heard that these can run on waste oil, or at least a mixture of waste oil. And working on cars, that's something I have quite a lot of. So when you set one of these up, there is an exhaust pipe that comes out of it. So it's got a little combustion chamber in here where it burns the fuel. That chamber heats up, it blows air across that, and that's how you get hot air coming out of this heater. But because there is combustion, you do have to have an exhaust. And the way these are meant to be set up in a vehicle is you would normally just drill a hole through the floor and route the exhaust out the floor of the vehicle, and just pump out underneath there. So if you put this in a shop or building, you'd normally, need to drill like a hole in your wall somewhere and route the exhaust out that way. What I decided to try is, since I already have a wood stove, and the wood stove has a chimney that goes up and outside, I just routed the exhaust right into the side of the wood stove, so I didn't have to drill any additional holes. One thing I will say when you're routing the exhaust that I found to be important is make sure the exhaust flows downstream until it actually opens up into whatever area you're venting it into. So just as an example, I previously had the exhaust routed up or routed down, and then it kind of bent back up and went into where you can see this hole has been welded back up here in the chimney. The problem that caused is at least when I was trying to burn fuels other than just diesel, it would act kind of like a trap in your sink, and excess unburnt oil ended up building up in the exhaust pipe and blocking the exhaust flow, causing the heater to not run. So I thought it is necessary to make sure the exhaust flows all the way down and into wherever you're going to dump it. So if you dump it out the wall or whatever, just make sure it's a continuous downward slope and don't have any upward kind of jogs in the exhaust. I also, as you can see, I ditched the little muffler it comes with. If you have that muffler inside the building that you're also heating, just note that it's not sealed very well, and I was getting exhaust leaks around that muffler and letting smoke and everything into the shop. So that was something I just ditched just to reduce the points that could have leaks. Oh, and another benefit that I got from running the exhaust down into the wood stove like this is, or the exhaust is a decent amount of additional heat that's normally wasted. If you check the temperature on this pipe, it will get quite hot, upwards of 300 degrees. And that's a lot of additional heat that normally is just wasted going out into the air. And I found that by plumbing this into the wood stove like this, it does actually help to slowly warm up the whole wood stove box and the chimney on it as it flows through here. So that helps at least a little bit to recapture some of the what would normally be wasted heat. And then I guess I'll also mention this little box I got here. This is a 20 amp inverter. So these heaters, as it says right here, they run on 12 volts since it's meant to be used in a vehicle. So if you don't want to have this hooked up to a battery all the time in order to run it, and you want to be able to just plug it into, your wall outlet, you need some kind of inverter. So I got this little guy off Amazon. I'm going to have a second video explaining exactly what model this is, how to hook it up, and get it working with your heater. So I'll put a link to that down here in the video. But this I found really made things a lot more simple and slimmed down. Before I was using a battery that I then had to make sure I kept it charged up enough for this to run, and it was just additional stuff to deal with. Being able to just plug it into the wall is a lot more simple. So as far as using this heater as a shop heater, your results will probably vary depending on how big your shop is. They call this an 8 kilowatt heater, which I looked that up, and it works out to being around 27,000 BTUs. I don't know exactly how accurate that is. I mean, they also sell a 2 kilowatt and a 5 kilowatt, and they all look exactly the same. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all can put out pretty much the same amount of heat. So I don't know if this really means much, but from my actual experience, I'm using this in my shop here, which is about 750 square feet of space with 8-foot ceilings. It does have insulation in the walls and in the ceilings. The biggest heat loss is probably through the garage doors that aren't sealed the best. And I did do a pretty good test on a very cold day when I think the highs were like 5 to 8 degrees. These are all Fahrenheit numbers, by the way. And the low was around like 0. So it had gotten down to about 30 degrees in the shop. I ran this for an hour, and it got it from 30 degrees to 36 degrees in an hour. This is, a rather large space, but if you think you're going to get one of these heaters and use it to heat any sort of larger area and heat it quickly, you're going to be disappointed. It's probably going to work best in like if this was just like a single bay garage space. And if you're using it in an environment that doesn't get super cold, if your cold temperatures are maybe in the mid 30s, 40 degrees is a cold day for you, this could probably heat up a space like that up into the 60s relatively easy, and you'd be fine. But if I live kind of up in the mountains, a bit higher elevation, and it can get quite cold around here. And when I did that test, that was just running diesel, because I do know that other fuels have more heat energy in them. So next I wanted to talk about my experience running this on waste oil, because that is probably the reason you even clicked on this video, and that's the big thing that everyone wants to do, because that was the reason I got one. And with fuel prices being as high as they are, having a free source of fuel is, definitely a major draw. I will just say right off, just to get to the point, this does not run on pure waste oil. At least it didn't for me. I tried dumping just straight waste oil in here. And that was after priming it with diesel initially and getting it running. I then shut it off, put straight waste oil in, and it did not run. It gave me on the screen, it pops up as an E8 error code, which is a failure to ignite. It's just not flammable enough of a fuel on its own to actually burn in this thing. The other mixtures I tried that did work is a 50-50 mixture of diesel and oil. That worked out pretty well. I did have an issue after only running it for a little while where it did seem to clog up. I had to take the whole assembly apart and open up the combustion chamber. Because that combustion chamber had gotten all coked up and full of soot and deposits, and it was actually preventing it from running correctly at all. So I had to open it up, clean all that crud out of there, actually burned some of it out, and then tried it again. After doing all that, it did start working all right again. Burned up the rest of the 50-50 mix of oil and diesel, and from there I then tried doing the straight just waste oil, which did not work. And from there I decided to go ahead and try adding some gas to the oil instead of diesel. And with that, I found you can get away with, from my testing so far, it seems to be a 4-to-1 ratio of waste oil to gas. So for every gallon of waste oil, add a quart of gas, and that seems to burn pretty well. I've burned a couple tanks like that, and it seems to be working pretty well so far. I haven't tried to open it back up again to see if it's getting all coked up and full of deposits, but it has been burning well. It actually burns quite a bit hotter with that mixture. One of the issues is if you run it too thin and have too much gas, it will overheat the system, and it will throw. I was getting an E5 error code, which is for overheating. So it actually was burning too hot and shutting itself down. So just know if you try to run too much gas, it actually will overheat the unit. So as far as, the usefulness of this, it lately has been a nice source of additional heat. It hasn't been as cold as it was that day when I tried it, when it was about 30 degrees in the shop. And with burning this hotter mix of waste oil and gas, it actually can do a pretty good job of warming even this 750 square foot space up. Okay, so I've had the heater running for about an hour now, maybe a little shy of an hour, and it's gotten up to 48 degrees in here. It's gotten it up as high as 55 in here. I'm sure if I let it run longer, it could do even better, and that would depend on how cold it was outside as well. Something else I found at least helped me a lot when it came to getting this to run well on any sort of waste oil mixture, whether it's the 50-50 diesel and oil mix or the waste oil and gas mix, is to set this to the Alpine mode, which is the high altitude setting. And at least on this model with this blue control panel, you get that by holding the little gear and the OK button down at the same time. And you'll get this little mountain symbol will show up here. And essentially all that really does is slows down the rate of the fuel pump, so it doesn't pump as much fuel in as quickly, so that you get essentially a little bit of a leaner air to fuel mixture in the combustion chamber. Before doing that, I was having a lot of problems with this producing a really excessive amount of smoke when I would put any of the waste oil mix in here. So yeah, the Alpine mode really helped with that. So when you're running these on just diesel, it'll get a pretty clean burn. But because the waste oil is actually like a denser fuel, it burns with actually more energy than diesel. You don't need as much to get the same amount of heat out of it. You know, kind of like in a diesel truck, if you have too much fuel, not enough air, that's how you get all that black smoke. And that black smoke is all unburned fuel. So you actually need to lean the mixture out, add more air and less fuel to get a more complete burn. So that's basically what this Alpine mode is doing, is just getting a leaner burn to compensate for higher altitudes. Um, so even if you're not at a higher altitude, I would recommend using this mode with any sort of waste oil mixture. And I know that on some of these there is other settings that you can adjust. I know that there's some, like, I think it's this a 1688 code that you can input into this screen and get to some like additional special menus. I could not find that on this model with this blue control panel. This is, I think, the newest style control panel. So I don't know if they removed the ability to get in there and adjust those other settings on this newer model, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work with this panel. So if that's something anyone knows how to do, you go ahead and leave a comment about that, because that's something I would like to know as well. Because maybe this could be adjusted to run even cleaner and better with the waste oil mix in there. So let's give you my thoughts on this thing after having done quite a few experiments and been running it for a few weeks now. I would say it is worth it for the price. For around $100, it does what I wanted it to do, and especially if it continues to run well on this gas and waste oil mixture, at 4-to-1 ratio, that means I could get essentially 5 gallons of usable fuel for 1 gallon, or for the price of 1 gallon of gas, which, at least around here right now, gas is actually even cheaper than diesel. I think it's even cheaper than buying the red farm diesel, because you need even less gas to get this to combust with waste oil. I think that's really the most economical option. So overall, yeah, I'd say for the price, to get something that can run off of mostly waste oil, I'd say this thing is worth it. Even in a larger space that I'm trying to use it in, where it can't always keep up completely on its own, it is still a nice supplemental heat source, or it's something I can, just turn on and run for a few hours before I plan to come out in the shop. So overall, I would recommend this, and especially if you have a smaller space that you're heating, I would think it would work fine. So anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on this. I do plan to do some more tests. I also have some old peanut oil, so I'd like to also go ahead and try it out on the peanut oil, just to see how it can do with an organic fuel. But so far, it's been a nice source of additional heat this winter. I can take what would normally be waste I'd have to get rid of and burn it in here and use it as a source of heat. So even if it can't keep up completely on its own, just that right there is a nice benefit. But anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on this. I'll be probably making at least one more video about running the peanut oil in here, and if I come up with any other tests or things to try, yeah, look out for those videos too. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.